So, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Nesbitt Connection podcast. Obviously, hey, it's great to have you here, and I appreciate you, tuning in and listening. I love your support, and it's great to have it. I think the easiest way to explain this month's podcast is I'm going to call it what I've been calling lately the Great COVID Hangover. I'm just totally amazed at how COVID has completely ruined every company that I've got to work with. It's ruined it in the sense of the culture, the people showing up for work. Obviously, the companies are they're profitable and whatnot, but of course, there's more to a company than profit. There's got to be some culture there. And just to kind of begin with, I'm going to share a story with you because, to me, it was probably one of the greatest compliments that I ever could have received. I was working with a group last week. And after it was done, there's a gentleman there who's a really a very good guy. I really enjoy our conversations. And the thing is that he told me after that, he said he went to this rather large company, and he said they were doing some training that much like I am doing or was doing with them, or am doing with them, whatever you want to call it. And he said, there was a gentleman there who was very academic. Nothing against academic, but this guy was very academic, and he had... let's just say he had lost the group, and the group he was working with was typically blue-collar people who I like to refer to have a shower after work, because I'm going to tell you, there's a world of difference of working with people who have a shower after work and the ones that take a shower before work. You cannot believe the difference. But anyway, he says this guy was working with this group, and he said, the easiest way to put it, he says the group was falling asleep. But he says, Mark, he says, with your training and the way you speak, he said, you keep it relevant. And he said, because you keep it relevant, you keep us engaged. And I thought, hey, look, that's one of the greatest compliments that I ever could have got. And I just want to share with you a quick story about how I do that. Let's face it, the industry has changed. Everything has changed. I remember growing up watching Archie Bunker, and let's just say Archie Bunker is not that cool anymore. I still find him funny. But the thing is, let's just say I don't think Archie Bunker would be that popular today. But the easiest way to explain this is I was working with a group this week, and excellent group of young leaders. They're, I would say mostly all young leaders. And there was one gentleman there, I'm going to say he might be 30. And this guy is a rock star at what he does. He's very good at what he does. But he's kind of like, even though he's 30, he's old school. And I'm trying to explain to this group that, whether we like it or not, and this is the key word, whether we like it or not, we, I think, have to thank our people for showing up for work in the morning. And I think we need to tell them, hey, look, you're doing a good job. Because let's face it, you look at every situation where somebody's quit a job, somebody's not happy, where there's confrontation. It's typically always about feelings. Somebody's feelings got hurt. I've had my feelings hurt. And the interesting thing is that some of the biggest, toughest, brawliest people you ever seen, full of tattoos and muscles and whatnot, sometimes their feelings can get hurt the easiest. So I said to this young gentleman, I said, you got to thank them for doing that. And he, and in the group, and this is really cool, I love when this happens. In the group, he actually started to argue with me. He said, I don't have to do that. He says, they get a paycheck, that's all they need. And he was pretty emotional about it. And I love working with passionate people like that. And I said, are you sure about that? He said, no. He said, they get a paycheck, they show up for work, they're well paid. What else do they need? And I kind of thought for a minute. And the first thing I said is, look, I'm not here to offend you, but I said, I want to use kind of an example. And he said, okay. And I said, look, please don't take it personally, but I want to use this as an example. And I said to this young gentleman, I said, are you married? He says, yeah. I said, you got kids? Yeah, I got a couple of kids, a couple of boys. He's really proud of these boys, and rightfully so. I said, so let me just ask you this question. I said, the day you got married, did you tell your wife that you loved her? And he said, well, yeah, and he kind of wondered what I was talking about. And I said, have you told her since? And he said, well, yeah, I tell her all the time. So then I kind of got excited. I said, well, why would you do that? I said, you bring home a paycheck. You don't need to. You told her once. Why would you tell her again? And you have no idea how that got the room's attention. Something as simple as that, it's relevant, right? And that's kind of like how I like working with groups. And I love working with some of these smaller to mid-sized companies because, boy, you can make a difference with them. You really can. So like I say, that's, I got a compliment, and there's just an example how I like to do it. Sometimes I'm maybe a little more, we'll say, outspoken than some leadership people when it comes to leadership and companies and whatnot and cultures. That's all right. I like to pride myself and call it a spade a spade. And right now, in Canada in particular, we have what I call the Great COVID Hangover. It's incredible to see how people aren't showing up for work and nobody wants to work. I was with a group, I guess, 2 weeks ago, and the gentleman said to me, Mark, he said, we hired 5 new people the other morning. They come in. He said 5 of them come in. He said 4 of them left by noon. And he said the other young gentleman that stuck around didn't know how to hold a broom to sweep the floor. He was trying to sweep the floor by holding onto the broom with one hand. So like that's real. Yeah, some of the other leadership people are going to tell you that, oh, you don't see that. That's fine. But in the industries that I work with, it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster trying to get people. It's not uncommon to see a sign up saying, I drove by, I actually put a picture on Instagram the other day. I drove by this place and I had a sign up at the gate, $1,500 signing bonus. You know, I'm going to tell you, in Canada, in the blue collar industry in particular, is an absolute disaster. There's no people. I'll tell you one even better than that. I had a Zoom call the other day. For those of you that don't know, this is actually somewhat funny. I'm deaf. I've shared that before. I have a really hard time hearing, and please, if you're working construction around loud noise, wear hearing protection, okay? So I'm on this Zoom call the other day with this lady because I'm going in for a cochlear implant, and she told me, she said, you know, Mark, she says, because you're so deaf, we've got you at the top of the list. And that's the first time I ever made it to the top of the list. I didn't realize it too because I was so deaf. But we're trying to determine when the operation day to be. I've been put off now, I guess, for 9 months to get this operation. And so I said, look, what seems to be the problem? She says, we have no staff. She says, there's no OR staff. We can't operate because there's no people. So it's not just the blue-collar industry. And I'm going to tell you from what I've seen, because I've got, we'll say, some family that work with and then in the health industry, it's not that there isn't enough money. Everything rises and falls on leadership. You know, it's time for some heads to start rolling and fix up this mess. It's like, that's the only way to fix it, I'm sorry. And the thing is, you get to see companies sometimes, and it's much the same way. You know, why aren't we attracting people? Now we get some good people in there, and of course, because of maybe their feelings got hurt, you know, that they left. And not only that, is I see it all the time, or maybe we don't spend enough time training them. You know, let's put it this way: if you get some young lad that comes in who doesn't know how to hold a broom, do you think he knows how to do anything else? Absolutely not. So we have to do our best to train them. And I'm a very, very firm believer today in the construction industry in particular. We need a full-time trainer at a company, somebody that just trains people. Success leaves clues. I worked for Kiewit. Believe it or not, I worked for Peter Kiewit when I was 17. I had to lie to get on the job. And one of the first people that I met on this job was, I'll never forget, his name was Gaetan Colomb. Gaetan Colomb was a gentleman. I had a lot of respect for him. He was one of these old-time guys that drove around the job chewing Copenhagen tobacco, and he usually had a big mess going down his chin, but Gaetan took time for me, and Gaetan was an equipment trainer. And I'd be loading trucks, and Gaetan would say, Mark, if we didn't back up so far, you'd be a lot quicker. And the thing is that Peter Kiewit is one of the top construction companies in the world. Success leaves clues. So I just want to share that with you. And one of the things that I see, there's a couple of things, but one of the things I think is really prominent here, people do what people see. In Canada, I love picking on politicians because they're such easy picking. Like there's such low-hanging fruit there that it's easy to do. But I love picking on politicians. Our fearless leader in Canada has decided that there's not going to be any more meetings in House of Commons, that everybody's just going to work from home, I think, for another year. So when you hear that on the news, okay, that the leaders of the country, the ones making decisions, are just going to work from home and work in their pajamas, does that give you any kind of an incentive to go to work? You know, I was with a group a week or so ago, and we were talking about how dire the situation is. And I flat out said to the group, I said, forgive me if this is a political bent, but I said, we have to have a leader in this country that literally has to stand up like Winston Churchill did in the Second World War. And I think it was the Second World War. He said, the country needs you. And we literally need a leader in Canada, I guess for North America, for that matter, somebody to stand up and say, look, the country needs you. Industry needs you. The food industry needs you. If you can work and if you are able-bodied, we need you to come to work. And I said that to this group, and they agreed. But you know what's funny? One of the people in the group says, but problem with that is, Mark, he says there isn't a government leader anymore that people would listen to. And I thought, whoa, that's it's true, isn't it? I know that we've got government leaders in Canada. So if they told me to do something, I wouldn't listen. I'm sorry, I just wouldn't. So like I say, it's one of those things that, it's COVID has ruined a lot of companies. And one of the things that I have seen more than anything is that everybody stopped meeting. Everybody stopped training. You don't get to see anybody anymore. You don't get to talk to them anymore. You don't get to bring them up on what's actually going on in the company. I'm really lucky. I get to work with this one. I think he's a fabulous leader. And as soon as COVID began, I suggested to him, I said, I think what you need to do, since you can't get together with your people, I said, what's wrong with sending out like a little short video, get your selfie, and he's been doing that ever since. He was doing it weekly when the lockdowns were on. Now I think he still does it once a month. A little short video, sends it out to the entire company. Look, this is what we're doing. These are the jobs we're getting. Not everybody watches it. That's all right. You're never going to get everybody watching. But he's making an honest, sincere effort to communicate with this company. And it really doesn't get any better than that. So like I said, there's one example of how to do it. But, if you know anybody, and I'm somewhat aware of this because I've had, we'll say some experience with it, but if you know anybody, let's just say whoever been to a 12-step program, let's just say quitting drinking, for example, they attend meetings regularly. And, and I'm somewhat experienced with this, and they say that, hey, you go in there and you get to talk about problems with people and you go home and you feel better. Okay? It saves people's lives. It literally saves people's lives. And not only that is if you talk to somebody who, say, had a long period of sobriety, you say, hey, look, I thought you quit drinking. And they said, yeah, I did. Well, what happened? What made you start again? And the first thing they tell you is I stopped going to meetings. So it's amazing, and this is not saying anything negative or something, but it's amazing to see what leaders can learn from a bunch of drunks. I'm sorry, I'm just throwing it out there. Leaders can learn a lot from a bunch of drunks. And the thing, and that's not, I have a lot of respect for these people at these meetings. I'm not saying anything negative. So I want to make sure that's true. But the thing is that, we see it all the time. We see it all the time where you're not allowed in. Nobody wants to talk to anybody. I know this one person in particular, let's just say I know them quite well, again, in the healthcare, openly says that for the last couple of years, the senior leader of the department that they work in hides in their office all day, only comes out when there's a problem because of fear of COVID. Meanwhile, this department is just, it's from what I understand, just an absolute gong show. People are they're fed up, they're tired, but the leader, they're hiding in their office. I think some of my best thinking when I go for a run. The one that's funny because I went for a run one time and I seen a politician out knocking on doors and, let's just say they wanted to talk to me and I don't think I told this politician what they're expecting to hear. But the interesting point is that, again, picking on politicians is low-hanging fruit. As poor of leaders as they are, when it comes to election time, they don't sit behind their desk. They get out and knock on doors. And they kiss the babies and they flip the pancakes and they're out meeting the people. And I'm going to tell you, as leaders, we need to do the same thing. Our people want to see us. And I'll tell you one better than that. I was at a place the other day, and there's a gentleman there, and this guy, again, very outspoken. I love these outspoken people. He says, Mark, he said the owner of the company drove through the yard the other day. First time in 4 months. And you know something? He never talked to anybody. And you could tell that that really burned him. You could tell that that really burned him. So again, I don't know his reason behind it, but I'm just saying people see that. And not only that is that I get to hear it all the time because I get to work with boots on the ground, okay? And they say, Mark, he says, sometimes one guy said to me the other day, he says, I know that I can do 10 of these a day. He says, meanwhile, there's a guy in the office that never comes out, and he's telling me that I can do 15 a day. Like, what is that? He doesn't know. I'm the guy on the ground. Now, I'm one for trying to increase production. If we can increase production, by all means. But you can always ask it. And one of my favorite questions is, if you were me, what would you do differently? What's wrong with doing that? It's a simple question. But I just think that, we lose credibility with our people, because of our actions. Another example, I've had a busy week. Tell you the truth, on Monday, I worked with 5 different companies on Monday. Today's Friday morning. And the only reason I'm actually have time to do this podcast is my Friday morning session got postponed until next week with this one company. But on Monday, I worked with 5 different companies. Tuesday, I started at 7 in the morning with my first Zoom call, and I finished, I did an on-site session, and then I did a Zoom training. I finished at 8:45 Tuesday night. So I'm telling you, I get to talk to a lot of people. I get to listen to a lot of people. So I'm somewhat knowledgeable on what people are saying. I went to a job site the other day, and this young gentleman there, a fine young gentleman, when I seen him, I'm like, God, any company would die to have this young guy. He's just so passionate about what he does, and he's professional, and he's just everything you want. Like, let's just say he does more than fog up a mirror. And some companies today, they hire people that can just fog up a mirror. This guy's not like that. This guy, I'm telling you, he's a future rock star. I think he's like 26, 27. He said, Mark, they send me people. And he said that they're, I'm trying to remember the exact word he said, but more or less inadequate people. And he mentioned how they sent about somebody, a good example was to do flagging. And he said, this person showed up at the job, and he said, 7 o'clock in the morning, I got to block the road, have to do a job. This person is supposed to be good at flagging. He said it was terrible. He said it was just absolutely terrible. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he mentioned something very simple. He says, well, when you're a flagger, you can't stand past that line. And the first thing they did is they stood past that line. He says, the Ministry of Labor shows up. He said, I'm the one that gets fined. He said, I haven't got time to train flaggers. He said, I'm supposed to open up or dig up this road today. I haven't got time for that. So it's interesting. So coincidentally, I just happened to bump into, I guess it'd be his boss the next day. And I just said to him, hey, look, for what it's worth, this young gentleman, he expressed some concern that maybe the people, you're sending aren't trained. And let's just say this senior leader had he wanted no part of it, didn't want to hear it. And you see, that's dangerous. When we don't listen to our people, whether they're right, wrong, or different, when we don't listen to them, that's his opinion. I can't change his opinion. And if he thinks these people that he's getting are substandard, well, who am I to say he's not? Now, I had a good talk with him, and I explained to him how, we typically, and this is the truth, we typically judge other people on our skills. So if I'm really good at something and somebody comes out and they're not as good as me, well, then I'll typically be critical of them because they're not as good as me. And I explained all that to him, and I went through a few other things with him. And sure enough, he I think he had a pretty good grasp on it. But the thing is that when your leader doesn't listen to you, that can be pretty dangerous. That can be pretty dangerous. If people are talking, they don't, not everybody talks for no reason. So I think that's one of the things we need to, certainly be aware of, because it can happen in a hurry. And let's say our people need to see us. They need to see us more than ever. So I'm working with this other company. I'm actually starting next Thursday. We're doing a group session, and it's interesting. As I was talking to the owner of the company, we were discussing, I'm supposed to work with 2 young gentlemen at this one company, and I said, maybe it might be a good idea to work with everybody. And we haven't got time. We've got to shut down the jobs. And I said, how are the jobs going? And he said, well, we're behind because of different situations. And I said, And I respect this guy. Very, very smart man. This guy's been in the industry close to 30 years. And I said to him, sometimes, we need to take the time to sharpen the saw. And the thing is, and he got that. And I pride myself on being flexible. You have no idea sometimes how flexible I can be with companies. So I just said to him, look, if that's an issue, why don't we do it like on a Thursday night? Let's do a training session from 4 to 6 or 4 to 7, 5 to 7, whatever we want. Bring in some pizza, get the guys here. He says, I think that might work. He said, I think that might work. I said, well, maybe we should kind of work on that. And he bought into that. And there's nothing more powerful than getting the people together and explaining what the game's all about, what a win looks like. There are people that don't even know what a win looks like. And I'll give you another example. I'm at a place the other day. This young gentleman, since the last time I saw him, he actually got a promotion. And he deserves a promotion. He really does. He's a hard worker, very smart, and the thing is, he's very quiet. And that's, I have trouble with him sometimes, especially working in a group, because he won't talk. So he told me about this new position. I said, when did you get the new position? He said, they promoted me actually in January, the first of the year. I said, that's absolutely beautiful. I said, but let me ask you. I said, do you know what's expected of you? Like, did they tell you, now that you're in this new position, what's expected of you, what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to act? He said, no. He said, believe it or not, I got a meeting with them this week. We're at the end of August. He got promoted in January. And that is so typical. That is so typical. I worked with another guy the other day, and from what I understand, excellent shovel operator. This guy was an excellent shovel operator. He was such a good shovel operator, they gave him a foreman's position. So I kind of said to him, I said, from what I hear, you're an excellent shovel operator. He said, yeah, it's all right, bit of seat time and whatnot. And I said, so now that you're in this leadership position, what tools have you been given to be a leader? He said, none. And I see that all the time, where we take somebody that's really good at what they do, and put them in a position, managing people, at some sort of leading people, and guess what? They fail. And the funny thing is if you're a shovel operator, if the ground is hard, what do? You hit it harder. You just keep hitting it harder and harder till the ground breaks. Well, you take that same mentality with your people, and guess what? It's not going to work. And I'm a firm believer that you look at a road building company, a company that does sewer and water. I really believe the shovel operators, can be the best foreman. And I believe in a quarry situation, a loader operator can be, excellent foreman, because these operators, these people who are very highly skilled, they're all over the job site, and they get to watch everything while they're doing it. And they're usually so full of ideas and so full of wisdom. Again, if we just stop and ask them, hey, look, if you were me, what would you do differently? Yeah, and sometimes they just want to talk. They just want to talk. And we got to spend time with them. I was at a site, it was probably 3 weeks ago now. And we're actually doing a post on this. The girls are doing a social media post. You'll see it here in the next couple of weeks. I got to meet a young gentleman named Thomas. Thomas worked for Arrow Crushing. I can say that. Thomas is a great guy. He works for Arrow Crushing. I got to meet him. I went to one of Arrow's sites because I do work with their leaders on site. I'm on an Arrow site and I meet Thomas. Thomas he's only been in the crushing business a little while. And I said, hey, look, Thomas, what's your past experience? He said, I work on a farm. Very interesting guy. He said he worked on a dairy farm that milked 1,000 cattle. That's a big farm. And I'd love to see it because I love farming. But I said, what experience do you have on crushers? And he said, well, not really a whole lot. He said, I'm still learning. And I kid you not, there was if you ever go near a ready mix plant, sometimes they make, square concrete blocks with the extra concrete. There was one of them beside the plant, beside the tool trailer, actually, beside the plant. I sat there most of the morning with Thomas. Now, obviously, he had to come and go because he had a job to do. But I sat there most of the morning beside Thomas. And, we had a great chat. You've got no idea sometimes just sitting and spending the time with somebody. And I explained to him, hey, look, crushing, it's a good career. You get into crushing, you become a millwright, you become a welder, you're a hydraulic expert, you're an electrician, you're equipment operator. You can't believe the skills you get working on a crusher. And I shared this with him, and I kind of showed him what to look for and what not to look for. And I just took the time. Because I can remember how when I first got in the business, some of my first leaders would literally come in the yard, and I would get in the vehicle with them, and we would just sit there and talk. Sometimes talk for 2 hours. And I don't even know what the conversations were about. I couldn't remember them. But I'm going to tell you, when I got done with them, I knew that I was wiser. I knew where I was going. I knew what was expected of me. And I call it just seat time. You can't get over how much you can learn, mentoring somebody in the seat of a F-150 pickup truck. You just can't. It's unbelievable. And again, we need to take the time to do this. And this is as part of this COVID hangover. Everybody's afraid of. I'm beyond it. I'm beyond it. I went for a run last night. Maybe my wife would give me trouble if I said this. I went for a run last night. Okay, in Canada where I live, and I can't believe what I saw. I actually wanted to circle around the block so I could see it again. There was a gentleman outside at his house cutting his grass. I thought that was beautiful. It's nice to see people cutting the grass. Safety glasses on, gloves, work boots, and an N95 mask cutting his grass outside. So there are people who are afraid of COVID, and I get that, and that's your thing. If he's that worried, God bless him. But the thing is there are still some people afraid of that, but there's others that aren't. And you got to remember, you got to feed the hungry. And there's some people out there that are really hungry. They need your help. And they need your attention. And I'm going to tell you, if you don't give it to them, they're going to go somewhere else where they get it. Thank you so much for turning into this podcast. I appreciate your support. Obviously, click the follow button and please rate us, because the more ratings we get, of course, the more people get to listen. Have a great day. Thank you.